My name is Alex Thorne, 38, and for 17 years, I believed my life was a carefully constructed fortress of stability, a loving wife, 2 great kids, a steady job. A perfect, predictable existence built on 17 years of blissful ignorance. Then came the annual company picnic at Miller's Lake. My own brother, David, stumbled upon something, a misplaced phone, a notification flashing on its screen. That single, innocent click shattered my entire world into a million irreparable pieces. How quickly can a lifetime of trust dissolve? In less than 48 hours, I discovered not just one affair, but 2, not just deceit, but a hidden bank account, not just betrayal, but a plan to vanish, leaving me with nothing. Everything unraveled in a horrifying, breathless blur. And the architect of this elaborate deception? My wife, Sarah. She was humming a lullaby to our daughter, completely oblivious to the digital storm I was about to unleash. Before I do, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story earns it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I like knowing who's out there. The thing about catching your wife cheating is that it never happens like in the movies. There's no dramatic music, no slow-motion betrayal, just the sound of hotel room laughter through a door you shouldn't have opened. My name is Eddie Hawkins and I'm a project manager for a construction company in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Not exactly glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps my hands busy. I've been married to Claire for 15 years, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought we had a decent thing going. Shows what I know about anything. It started with the corporate summit. Claire works in HR for Foster Industries, one of those glass and steel operations downtown that makes money by moving money around. Her boss, Bradley Foster, decided the whole management team needed a weekend retreat at the Marriott to discuss synergy and team building. Corporate nonsense, but Claire was excited about it. It's a big opportunity, Eddie, she said, packing her best clothes. Brad thinks I have real potential for advancement. Brad. She'd been talking about Brad a lot lately. Brad this, Brad that, Brad so smart, Brad so successful. I should have seen it coming, but I was too busy trusting my wife like an idiot. The weekend came and something felt wrong. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Claire was lying about something. Saturday night, I drove to the hotel just to check on her. I told myself, make sure she was okay. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt like it took forever. Room 714. I knocked. Just a minute. Claire's voice called out, followed by muffled conversation and what sounded like someone moving around quickly. The door opened and there was my wife in a hotel bathrobe. Her hair messed up, lipstick smeared. Behind her, sitting on the edge of the bed in his undershirt, was Bradley Foster, 42 years old, silver hair, the kind of guy who thinks he's God's gift to the corporate world. Eddie, Claire's face went white. What are you doing here? I looked past her at Brad, who was trying to button his shirt like nothing was happening. The room smelled like expensive cologne and guilt. Funny thing, I said, stepping into the room uninvited. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd see how the team building was going. Looks like you two are really building something. Brad stood up, putting on his CEO voice. Eddie, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The hotel made a mistake with the room assignments. We were just discussing the presentation for tomorrow. I laughed. Actually laughed. A presentation in your underwear? That's creative, Brad. Claire tried to salvage the situation. Eddie, you need to apologize to my boss. It's not his fault they put us in the same room. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. That's when something snapped inside me. Not violent, just cold and calculating. I looked around the room and spotted Brad's laptop on the desk, still open, probably full of company secrets and personal information. Sure, Claire. Let me apologize for not being as gullible as you thought. I walked over to the laptop, closed it, and picked it up. Brad's eyes went wide. "Hey, that's company property," he said, taking a step toward me. I held up my hand. "Stay right there, Brad. I'm just going to help you with your presentation." Then I threw his laptop against the hotel room wall hard. It made a satisfying crack as the screen shattered and pieces scattered across the carpet. The look on Brad's face was priceless. Pure shock, like someone had just told him his trust fund was fake. Claire started crying, but I was past caring about her tears. "You want to play games with my marriage?" I said to Brad. "Fine, but remember, I'm the guy who fixes things when they break, and right now you look pretty broken to me." I walked to the door, then turned back. "Stay away from my wife, Brad. This is your only warning." I left them there. Claire sobbing and Brad staring at his destroyed computer. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life, but by the time I pulled into my driveway, I had a plan forming. Back home, I went straight to my workshop in the garage. I still had the sticky note from Brad's laptop, his cloud backup login information that he'd stupidly left attached to the bottom of his computer. Amazing how careless people get when they think they're untouchable. It took me 2 hours to hack into his accounts. I'm not a computer expert, but I know enough about technology to get by. And Brad's password security was pathetic. Probably password 123 or something equally brilliant. What I found made my stomach turn. Emails between Brad and Claire going back 6 months, photos, plans for weekend trips, and worse, evidence that Brad had been manipulating Claire from the beginning, using her position in HR to cover up his harassment of other female employees. But the real treasure was a folder labeled insurance recordings and documents Brad had been collecting on various employees, including me. He'd been planning to get rid of me for months, probably to clear the way for his relationship with Claire. I downloaded everything, every email, every photo, every incriminating document. Then I sat back in my workshop chair and smiled for the first time in weeks. Bradley Foster had no idea what he just started. He thought he was dealing with some blue-collar husband who'd roll over and disappear quietly. He was about to learn that underestimating the working man was his biggest mistake yet. The war was just beginning, and I had all the ammunition I needed. Monday morning came faster than I wanted, but I was ready. Claire had spent Sunday trying to explain herself, spinning stories about how Brad was just being supportive, how the hotel thing was innocent, how I'd misunderstood everything. I let her talk while I planned my first move. "Eddie, please," she said over breakfast, her eyes red from crying. "You have to understand Brad is important to my career. If you make trouble for him, it'll hurt me, too." I buttered my toast and looked at her across our kitchen table. 15 years of marriage and I was seeing her clearly for the first time. The way she tilted her head when she lied, the way she touched her neck when she was nervous. All the signs had been there. "Don't worry about Brad," I said. "I'm sure he can take care of himself." She seemed relieved, probably thinking I was going to let it slide. Poor Claire had no idea what her husband was capable of when properly motivated. I went to work like normal, managing a renovation project downtown. But during my lunch break, I drove to the public library and used one of their computers. Anonymous internet access. No way to trace it back to me. The email I'd found in Brad's files was perfect, a message he'd sent to his assistant, Jason, about firing 3 employees for performance issues. But the real content made it clear he was getting rid of people who might cause problems for him. One was a woman who'd complained about his behavior. Another was a guy who'd seen too much. And the third was someone who'd asked too many questions about company finances. The email also contained Brad's thoughts on how to manage HR, meaning Claire, to make sure the firings looked legitimate. He'd written about her like she was a tool, something to be used and discarded when convenient. I forwarded that email to every address in the Foster Industries company directory. All 237 employees, from the janitors to the board of directors. Then I sent copies to the local newspaper business reporter and the state labor department. The subject line was simple. The real Brad Foster, company leadership at its finest. By the time I got back to my job site, my phone was buzzing with calls from Clare. I let them go to voicemail while I supervised the installation of new drywall. Amazing how therapeutic construction work can be when your personal life is falling apart. That evening, Clare was waiting for me when I got home, pacing around our living room like a caged animal. "Eddie, what did you do?" she demanded. "Brad's office is in chaos. There are lawyers everywhere, and HR is conducting emergency meetings." I sat down in my recliner and grabbed the remote. "Sounds like Brad's having a rough day. Maybe he should have thought about that before he decided to mess with other people's lives." "You don't understand," she said, her voice getting higher. "This affects me, too. I'm the HR manager. If there's a scandal, I'll be right in the middle of it." I looked at her. "Really?" Looked at her. "Clare, you are in the middle of it. Those emails I sent, they show how Brad was using you to cover up his schemes. You're not just involved, you're complicit." Her face went pale. "What emails? How did you get emails?" "Let's just say your boyfriend isn't as smart as he thinks he is." The next few days were beautiful to watch. Brad's reputation crumbled like a house built on sand. The newspaper ran a story about corporate misconduct at Foster Industries. The Labor Department opened an investigation. 3 different women came forward with harassment complaints. And the company's stock price dropped 15. But Clare wasn't going down without a fight. She had her friend Melanie Carter feeding her information from the corporate gossip network, and together they started working on a counterattack. It came Thursday evening, delivered by my buddy Frank Morrison. Frank used to be a cop before he went private, and now he runs a small investigation business. We'd been friends since high school, and he was one of the few people I trusted completely. "Eddie," he said, sitting at my kitchen table with a beer. "You need to see this." He showed me his phone, a video of me taken through our front window, yelling and throwing something across the room. It looked like I was having a violent outburst, maybe threatening someone off camera. "Where did this come from?" I asked. "Melanie Carter posted it on social media about an hour ago. Says, Claire's been living in fear that you've been abusive and unstable since you found out about her friendship with Brad." I stared at the video. It was real, but completely out of context. It was from last week when I'd been watching a football game and my team had blown a 20-point lead. I'd thrown a couch pillow and yelled at the TV, but edited the right way. It looked like domestic violence. "She's good," I admitted. "I'll give her that." Frank leaned forward. "Eddie, this is serious. Half the town has seen this video by now. People are talking about calling the police, getting you arrested for domestic violence." I thought about it while I finished my beer. Clare was playing dirty, trying to flip the narrative and make me the villain. In a way, I was impressed. She'd learned well from her boyfriend. "Frank," I said, "I need you to do some digging for me. Claire's been spending money lately, buying expensive clothes, going to fancy restaurants. I want to know where that money's coming from. You think Brad's been giving her cash?" "I think Brad's been giving her a lot of things, and I think it's time people knew about it." Frank nodded. "I'll make some calls, check some records. Give me a few days." After he left, I sat in my workshop and thought about my next move. Clare had escalated things, tried to destroy my reputation to protect herself and Brad. That was a mistake. I pulled up the rest of Brad's files on my computer. There was so much more than just the email I'd already used. Financial records, personal communications, photos from company trips that showed him with various female employees in compromising positions. But the real gold mine was a folder labeled Clare H., hundreds of messages between them, photos she'd sent him, records of gifts and payments he'd made to her. Evidence of their affair going back months, long before the hotel incident. I started planning my next attack. If Claire wanted to play the victim, I'd give her something to really cry about. Brad thought he could hide behind his corporate lawyers and public relations team, but he'd forgotten one important thing. I knew where he lived. Friday evening, I followed Brad home from his office. Not hard to do when the guy drives a bright red BMW and takes the same route every day. Predictable like everything else about him. Brad lived in Riverside Heights, the fancy part of town where all the houses look like they belong in a magazine. Big lawns, circular driveways, the kind of neighborhood where people hire other people to mow their grass. His house was exactly what I'd expected. Modern, expensive, and cold, all glass and steel, like the man himself. I parked across the street and watched him pull into his 3-car garage. What Brad didn't know was that I'd done my homework. His wife Diane was old money, the kind of woman who'd married him for his ambition, but never really trusted him. She was also the one with the real wealth in the family, something Brad conveniently forgot when he was bragging about his success. I waited until Brad had been inside for an hour, then walked up to their front door and rang the bell. Diane Foster answered, and I could see why Brad had married her. She was elegant in that untouchable way rich women manage. Probably 50 but looking 40 with the kind of style that money can't buy but breeding can. "Mrs. Foster," I said, putting on my most polite voice. "My name is Eddie Hawkins. I need to talk to you about your husband." She looked me up and down, taking in my work clothes and calloused hands. "I'm sorry, but if this is about business, you should contact Brad's office." "It's not about business, ma'am. It's about my wife." That got her attention. She stepped back and let me into their marble-floored foyer, which was bigger than my entire living room. Brad appeared from what looked like a home office, and his face went white when he saw me. "Eddie, what are you doing here?" "Diane, call security." I held up my hands. "Relax, Brad. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just thought your wife should know what kind of man she's married to." Diane looked between us, her expression sharpening. "What's this about, Bradley?" "Nothing, honey. This man is unstable. His wife works for the company, and he's been making threats since she got a promotion." I laughed. "A promotion? Is that what you're calling it?" I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. Brad's eyes went wide, probably thinking I had a weapon. Instead, I had something much more dangerous. Photographs. "Mrs. Foster, your husband has been having an affair with my wife for 6 months. These pictures were taken at the Marriott last weekend." I handed her the envelope and watched her face as she looked through the photos. They weren't explicit, but they were clear enough. Brad and Claire in the hotel bar holding hands. Brad and Claire in the elevator kissing. Brad and Claire entering the hotel room together. "You might want to get tested," I said quietly. "I don't know how many other women he's been with." Diane's face went through several emotions. Shock, anger, disgust. Then she turned to Brad with a look that could have frozen fire. "Bradley, is this true?" Brad was sweating now, his corporate confidence cracking. "Diane, you can't believe this. He's obviously unstable. Probably doctored those photos." "The metadata on these pictures shows they were taken last Saturday," I said helpfully. "The same weekend you told your wife you were in Chicago on business." Diane slapped him hard. The sound echoed through their expensive foyer like a gunshot. "Get out," she said to Brad, her voice icy calm. "Leave my house right now." "Diane, please let me explain." "Get out." I set the envelope on their marble counter and started toward the door, then paused. There was an expensive crystal vase sitting on a side table, probably worth more than I made in a month. "Oops," I said, and knocked it over with my elbow. It shattered on the marble floor, sending pieces everywhere. Brad jumped back like I'd thrown it at him. "Sorry about that," I said. "I'm just a clumsy working man, not used to such nice things." I walked outside and as I reached my truck, I heard Brad following me. "You think you're so smart," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I can destroy you, Eddie. I can make sure you never work in this town again." I turned around and looked at him. Really? Looked at him. Without his expensive suit and office power, he was just another middle-aged man having a midlife crisis. "Brad," I said, "you already tried to destroy me. The difference is I fight back." Then I took out my keys and walked along the side of his BMW, letting the metal scrape against the paint. Not deep enough to cause real damage, but enough to leave a nice long scratch along the entire passenger side. "That's for my wife," I said. "Touch her again, and next time I won't be so gentle." I drove home feeling better than I had in weeks. But the real satisfaction came the next morning when Frank called with news. "Eddie, you're going to love this. I checked Claire's bank records and she's been depositing cash every week for the past 4 months. Always the same amount. Always on Fridays." "How much?" $500 a week. That's 10 grand over 4 months. All cash. No paper trail." Back to Brad. "What else?" "Credit card records show she's been buying expensive lingerie, jewelry, clothes from high-end stores, stuff you two could never afford on your salaries." I smiled. "Frank, you're a beautiful man. There's more. I talked to Tina at Murphy's bar. You know how she hears everything. Tina Morrison was Frank's cousin and the best bartender in Cedar Falls. Murphy's was where all the office workers went after work, and Tina had a talent for getting people to talk. What did she hear? Claire and Melanie were in there Wednesday night planning their next move. Apparently, they're going to release another video of you, something they recorded without your knowledge." My good mood evaporated. "What kind of video?" "Tina couldn't hear all the details, but it sounds like they're trying to build a case that you're dangerous. Maybe get a restraining order against you." I thought about that. A restraining order would mean I couldn't go home, couldn't see my kids, couldn't defend myself. It was a smart move, and I had to respect the strategy even while I hated it. "Frank, I need you to keep an eye on Claire and Melanie. Find out what they're planning." "Already on it." "And Eddie, be careful. These people are playing for keeps now." After I hung up, I sat in my truck outside the job site and thought about my situation. Claire and Brad had escalated things beyond simple revenge. They were trying to destroy my life, turn me into the villain in their story. That was fine with me. If they wanted a villain, I'd give them one they'd never forget. I started my truck and headed toward Murphy's bar. It was time to have a conversation with Tina and see what other information was floating around town. The war was just getting started and I planned to win it. Murphy's bar sits on the edge of downtown Cedar Falls, the kind of place where working people go to forget about their problems for a few hours. Dark wood, dim lights, and a bartender who knows when to listen and when to pretend she didn't hear anything. Tina Morrison was wiping down glasses when I walked in Thursday evening. She's Frank's cousin, but they couldn't be more different. Where Frank is serious and methodical, Tina is sharp-tongued and quick with a joke. She's also the unofficial information broker for half the town. "Eddie Hawkins," she said without looking up. "Heard you've been busy lately." I sat down at the bar and ordered a beer. "Just trying to keep my life interesting." Interesting is one word for it. She set the bottle in front of me. "Your wife and her friend were in here again last night. Lot of whispering and planning going on. Frank mentioned that. You hear anything specific?" Tina glanced around the bar making sure no one was listening. "They're planning something big for tomorrow. Something about a video that's going to end this once and for all." According to Melanie, I took a long drink of beer and thought about that. "Any idea what kind of video?" "Something they recorded at your house." Claire seemed nervous about it, but Melanie kept pushing her to go through with it. That made my stomach tighten. What had they recorded and when? There's something else, Tina said, leaning closer. Brad Foster was in here Tuesday night drinking alone. Man was a mess, talking about how his life was falling apart. What did he say? Kept mumbling about how he was going to fix things, make you pay for ruining his marriage. He was pretty loaded, so I didn't take it too seriously, but he seemed genuinely angry. I finished my beer and left money on the bar. Thanks, Tina. I owe you one. Just be careful, Eddie. These people are playing dirty now. I drove home thinking about what Tina had told me. Claire and Melanie had another video, something they thought would end the fight. Brad was planning his own revenge. The situation was escalating fast and I needed to stay ahead of it. The next morning, I decided to take a different approach. Instead of going to work, I parked across the street from Foster Industries and waited for Brad to leave for lunch. He came out at exactly 12:30, just like every day. Predictable habits were going to be his downfall. I followed him through downtown traffic, staying back far enough to avoid detection. Brad drove to an expensive restaurant on the other side of town, the kind of place where business deals get made over 100 steaks. But instead of going inside, he sat in his car making phone calls. I parked where I could watch him and tried to read his lips. Whatever he was discussing, it was making him agitated. After 20 minutes, he started driving again. This time, he headed toward the residential area where I lived, my neighborhood. That's when I realized he wasn't just driving around. He was following a route, checking out my house, my kids' school, places where my family spent time. He was doing reconnaissance. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Going after me was one thing, but if Brad was thinking about involving my family, he'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I pulled out my phone and called Frank. I need you to keep an eye on my house today. Brad's been driving around the neighborhood and I don't like it. On my way, Frank said without hesitation. Brad finished his tour of my neighborhood and headed back toward downtown. But instead of going to his office, he drove to a part of town I didn't recognize. Older buildings, small businesses, the kind of area where you could conduct business without attracting attention. He parked outside a building with a sign that read Midwest Security Solutions. I knew the name. They were the kind of private security company that asked fewer questions than they should. Brad went inside and stayed for an hour. When he came out, he was with a man in an expensive suit who looked like he could handle himself in a fight. They shook hands and Brad handed him an envelope. I'd seen enough. Brad was hiring muscle, probably planning to intimidate me or worse. The gloves were officially off. I followed Brad back toward downtown, but this time I wasn't trying to stay hidden. I wanted him to know I was there. He noticed me in his rear-view mirror around 3rd Street. I could see him checking his mirrors more frequently, his driving becoming more erratic. Good. Let him sweat. At a red light, I pulled up next to him and rolled down my window. When he looked over, I smiled and waved like we were old friends. His face went white. The light turned green and Brad took off like he was being chased by the police, which in a way he was. I stayed right behind him as he wound through the downtown streets, trying to lose me in traffic. But I knew these roads better than he did. I'd been working construction in this town for 15 years. Brad turned on to Riverside Drive, probably heading for the police station or somewhere public where he'd feel safe. But traffic was heavy and he got stuck behind a school bus. I pulled up behind him and got out of my truck. Brad's eyes went wide in his rear-view mirror. He tried to change lanes, but cars were backed up in both directions. He was trapped. I walked up to his driver's side window and tapped on the glass. He rolled it down about 2 inches. Brad, I said conversationally. We need to talk. Get away from me, he said, his voice shaking. I'll call the police about what? I'm just having a conversation with my wife's boss. The school bus started moving and traffic began to flow again. Brad tried to roll up his window, but I put my hand on the glass. I saw you at Midwest Security, I said. Hiring protection? That doesn't seem very friendly. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Just like you don't know about the video Claire and Melanie are planning to release. That got his attention. His eyes flicked to mine and I saw fear there. Here's what's going to happen, Brad. You're going to call off whatever you're planning. You're going to leave my family alone and you're going to stay away from my wife. Or what? I smiled. Or I'll show your wife the rest of those photos. The ones from your other business trips. The ones with the other women. Traffic was moving faster now and I had to step back from his car. But I'd made my point. Think about it, Brad. I called after him as he drove away. You've got a lot more to lose than I do. That evening, Frank called with an update. Eddie, you were right to be worried. That guy from Midwest Security drove by your house 3 times today. I got his license plate and ran it. His name is Jason Mitchell and he's got a record for assault and intimidation. Brad's playing hardball now. There's more. Tina called me an hour ago. Claire and Melanie are at Murphy's right now and they're planning to release their video tomorrow morning. Something about catching you in a threatening situation. I thought about that. What threatening situation? When had they recorded me? Then it hit me. Last week when I'd confronted Claire about the hotel incident, she'd been holding her phone and I'd thought she was just nervous, but she'd been recording me, editing the footage to make me look dangerous. Frank, I need you to do something for me. Can you get into Murphy's without them seeing you? Probably. Why? I want to know exactly what they're planning, every detail. Eddie, what are you thinking? I looked out my workshop window at the house where my wife was probably planning my destruction. I'm thinking it's time to end this war before someone gets hurt. Frank called me at 6 o'clock in the morning with intelligence from Murphy's bar. Eddie, you need to hear this. Claire and Melanie are planning to release their video at 10 this morning, right before the weekend news cycle. They've already sent copies to your boss, the police, and the local newspaper. I sat up in bed, fully awake. Now, what's in the video? According to what Tina overheard, it's footage of you threatening Claire in your own kitchen. They edited it to make you look violent and unstable. When did they record this? Last Wednesday, when you two were arguing about Brad. Apparently, Claire had her phone hidden behind a coffee mug recording everything. I remembered that conversation. I'd been angry, pointing my finger and raising my voice, but I'd never threatened her. With the right editing, though, it could look like domestic violence. There's more, Frank continued. They're planning to get a restraining order this afternoon, claiming you're dangerous. Brad's been coaching them on how to present their case. I got dressed and went to my workshop to think. In 4 hours, my reputation would be destroyed. By evening, I'd probably be arrested, or at least banned from my own home. Claire and Brad had played this perfectly. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated how far I was willing to go to protect myself. I called Frank back. I need your help with something. Can you get Tina to call Claire and tell her I want to meet? Eddie, that sounds like a trap. It is a trap, but not the kind they're expecting. An hour later, Frank called back. Tina made the call. Claire was suspicious, but Tina convinced her that you're ready to give up, that you want to apologize and work out some kind of deal. What did Claire say? She'll meet you, but only in a public place with witnesses. And she's bringing Melanie for backup. Perfect. Tell her the Sunset Motel on Highway 34, Room 12, noon today. Eddie, what are you planning? Justice. The Sunset Motel was the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be found. Cheap, anonymous, and far enough outside town that most people forgot it existed. I'd rented room 12 for the week, paying cash, and using a fake name. But room 12 wasn't where I planned to meet Claire and Melanie. That was just bait. I spent the morning setting up my real plan. Room 10, right next door, with a connecting door that the motel owner had forgotten to mention. I positioned a digital recorder near the wall between the rooms and tested the audio quality. Perfect. Then I called some friends. Tina arrived first, followed by Frank and 3 guys from my construction crew. I told them I was planning to confront the people who were trying to destroy my reputation, and they'd volunteered to be witnesses. Eddie. Tina said, "Are you sure about this? Claire and Melanie aren't going to just confess to their schemes. They will if they think they're safe." At 11:30, I saw Claire's car pull into the motel parking lot. She and Melanie sat in the car for 10 minutes, probably building up courage, before walking to room 12. I waited in room 10, listening through the thin walls as they settled in next door. "I don't like this," Melanie was saying. "What if it's a trap?" "Eddie's not that smart," Claire replied. "He's just a construction worker who got in over his head. Besides, we hold all the cards now." That stung a little, but it also confirmed what I'd suspected. They thought I was too stupid to outmaneuver them. I knocked on the connecting door. "Claire, it's Eddie. Can we talk?" There was whispering, then Claire's voice. "The door's locked from our side." "I know I have a key." I opened my side of the connecting door and after a moment I heard the lock turn on their side. Claire and Melanie were sitting on the bed looking nervous but confident. Claire had her phone out, probably recording again. "Okay, Eddie," she said. "Tina said you wanted to apologize and work something out." "I'm listening." I sat down in the room's only chair and looked at them. "I want to apologize for underestimating you two. You've been playing this game better than I expected." Melanie smiled. "We tried to warn you, Eddie. You should have just walked away when you had the chance." "The thing is," I continued, "I've learned a lot about both of you over the past few weeks. Things that might surprise you." Claire's confidence wavered slightly. "What do you mean?" I pulled out a manila folder and set it on the small table between us. "Melanie, did you know that Claire's been keeping secrets from you? About her relationship with Brad?" "What secrets?" Melanie asked, looking at Claire. "Show her the photos, Claire. The ones Brad took of you two in his office. The ones where you're doing more than just discussing business." Claire's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." I opened the folder and spread out several photographs. They were from Brad's private collection, images he'd taken with his phone during their encounters. Claire in various states of undress, clearly engaged in intimate activities. Melanie's eyes went wide. "Claire, you said it was just kissing. You said you were in control." "I am in control," Claire protested, but her voice was shaking. "Are you?" I asked. "Because these photos suggest otherwise, and there are videos, too. Brad's been documenting everything." That was a lie. But they didn't know that. "He wouldn't," Claire whispered. "He would, and he did. Insurance, he called it. In case you ever became a problem." Melanie was staring at the photos with disgust. "Claire, how could you be so stupid? He's been using you." "That's not true," Claire said, but she was crying now. I leaned forward. "Claire. Brad hired a private security company to intimidate me. He's planning to have me beaten up or worse. And when that happens, you'll be an accessory to assault." "No." She said he wouldn't do that. "He already has. The man's name is Jason Mitchell, and he's been watching my house, following my kids. Is that the kind of man you want to destroy your marriage for?" The room was quiet, except for Claire's sobbing. Melanie was looking at her friend with a mixture of pity and anger. "There's something else," I said quietly. "Diane Foster knows everything about the affair, about the company money Brad's been stealing, about the harassment lawsuits he's been covering up. She's filing for divorce and she's taking everything. Claire looked up at me with mascara running down her face. How do you know that? Because I told her last week when I visited their house. You what? I showed her the photos, Claire. All of them, including the ones of Brad with other women. You're not special to him. You're just another conquest. Melanie stood up abruptly. I'm done with this, Claire. You've been lying to me from the beginning. You said you had everything under control, that Brad was going to leave his wife for you. He is, Claire protested weakly. He's not, I said. He's going to throw you under the bus to save himself. In fact, he probably already has. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. One of the audio files I'd recovered from Brad's computer. His voice was clear. Claire's expendable. If this gets out, we'll say she seduced me, that she was the aggressor. Her word against mine, and I've got the better lawyers. Claire's face crumpled completely. She'd heard Brad's real opinion of her, and it was destroying her. The video you two made, I continued. The one you're planning to release this morning, Brad knows about it. He's been coaching you, but not to help you. He wants you to destroy me so I can't testify against him in the harassment cases. Melanie was backing toward the door. I never agreed to any of this. Claire, you're on your own. Wait, Claire called after her, but Melanie was already leaving. I looked at Claire sitting alone on the motel bed, her carefully planned revenge falling apart around her. It's over, Claire, I said quietly. Brad's finished and he's going to take you down with him unless you make a different choice. She looked up at me with red swollen eyes. What choice? Tell the truth about everything. The affair, the company corruption, the plan to frame me, cooperate with the authorities, and maybe you can avoid criminal charges. And if I don't, I stood up and walked to the connecting door. Then you'll go down with Brad's ship. Your choice. I left her there and went back to room 10 where Frank and the others were waiting. Did you get it all? I asked Tina. She held up her phone. Every word, including Brad's recording about throwing Claire under the bus. Good. Make sure copies get to the right people. Frank was grinning. Eddie, that was beautiful. You turned them against each other without breaking a single law. I looked out the motel window at Claire's car, still sitting in the parking lot. She was probably trying to decide whether to run or fight. The war's not over yet, I said. But I think we just won the most important battle. The final confrontation came sooner than I expected. That evening, my phone rang. It was Claire, and she sounded different. Defeated, broken. Eddie, we need to talk. Really talk this time. I'm listening, not over the phone. Meet me at Murphy's bar in an hour. Just you and me. I looked at Frank, who was sitting in my kitchen going over the recordings from the motel. He shrugged. Could be another trap, he said. Only one way to find out. Murphy's was busier than usual for a Friday night filled with office workers trying to forget their week and blue-collar folks celebrating the weekend. Tina was behind the bar and she gave me a subtle nod when I walked in. Claire was sitting in a corner booth looking like she'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, her makeup was smeared, and her hands were shaking around a glass of wine. I sat across from her and waited. It's over, she said without looking up. Brad won't return my calls. Melanie's telling everyone I'm crazy. The company's putting me on administrative leave pending an investigation. I'm sorry to hear that. She laughed bitterly. No, you're not. This is what you wanted. What I wanted was for my wife to be faithful. What I wanted was for my marriage to work. What I wanted was to not catch you in a hotel room with another man. Claire finally looked at me and I saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine remorse. Eddie, I made a mistake. A huge mistake, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work things out. I shook my head. Claire, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Dozens of choices over months. You chose to lie to me, to cheat on me, to try to destroy my reputation when I found out. I was scared. Brad said he'd take care of everything, that we could be together. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. She was crying again. Eddie, please. I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. We can move away. Start over somewhere else. I looked around the bar at all the normal people living their normal lives. And I felt something settle inside me. Peace, maybe, or just exhaustion. Claire, it's too late for that. Why? Because of your pride. Because of trust. You broke something that can't be fixed. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Eddie, I love you. I've always loved you. No, I said, pulling my hand away. You loved the security I provided. You loved having a husband who worked hard and didn't ask questions. But you never loved me enough to be faithful. The bar noise seemed to fade away as we sat there looking at each other. 15 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. In a dive bar with my wife begging for forgiveness I couldn't give. What happens now? She asked. Now you face the consequences of your choices. The police want to talk to you about the fake video. The company's investigating your role in Brad's schemes. Diane Foster's lawyers are looking into whether you helped Brad hide assets. Claire's face went white. They can't prove anything. They can prove everything. Brad kept records, remember? Photos, emails, financial transactions. He documented his whole relationship with you. But you said those were for insurance. They were insurance for him, evidence against you. I stood up to leave, but Claire grabbed my arm. Eddie, wait. What about our kids? What about our house? The kids will be fine. They're old enough to understand that sometimes marriages don't work out. As for the house, my lawyer will be in touch. Your lawyer? I filed for divorce this afternoon. You'll be served with papers on Monday. Claire stared at me like I'd slapped her. You can't do this. We can work it out. Checkout time, Claire, I said. The bills come due. I walked toward the bar exit, but before I reached the door, I heard commotion behind me. Claire was standing up yelling. This is all your fault, she screamed. You drove me away. You never appreciated me. The entire bar went quiet. Everyone staring at the well-dressed woman having a breakdown in the corner booth. You're nothing, she continued. Just a construction worker who thinks he's better than everyone else. Brad was twice the man you'll ever be. I turned around and looked at her one last time. Brad's finished, Claire. His wife took everything in the divorce. The company fired him and the police are investigating him for embezzlement and harassment. You picked the wrong horse. You're lying. Tina spoke up from behind the bar. He's not lying, honey. It was on the news an hour ago. Bradley Foster was arrested this afternoon. Claire's face went through several emotions: shock, disbelief, rage, and finally despair. She collapsed back into the booth and put her head in her hands. I walked outside into the cool evening air and took a deep breath. It was over. Really over. Frank was waiting by my truck, smoking a cigarette. How'd it go? He asked. About like you'd expect. She wanted to reconcile. And then some things can't be fixed once they're broken. We drove back to my house in comfortable silence. The place felt different now. Not like a home, but like a house where I used to live. Claire would probably get half of it in the divorce, but that was fine. I could start over. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing with text messages. Apparently, someone had recorded Claire's breakdown at Murphy's and posted it online. The video was spreading through social media and half the town had seen it by breakfast time. In the video, Claire looked exactly like what she was, a woman who destroyed her life, chasing after a man who never cared about her. The comments weren't kind. I felt a moment of pity for her, but it passed quickly. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. Around noon, Diane Foster called me. "Mr. Hawkins, this is Diane Foster. I wanted to thank you for opening my eyes about my husband." "You don't need to thank me, Mrs. Foster. I was just protecting my own family. Nevertheless, I'm grateful. I also wanted you to know that Bradley won't be bothering you anymore. The restraining order I obtained should keep him away from you and your family. I appreciate that. There's something else. The police found evidence that Bradley was planning to have you assaulted. A man named Jason Mitchell has been arrested and is cooperating with authorities." I wasn't surprised. Brad had always been the type to hire other people to do his dirty work. "Mrs. Foster, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Did you know about the affairs?" "I mean, there was a long pause. I suspected, but I chose to look the other way because it was easier than dealing with the truth. That was my mistake. We all make mistakes." "Yes, but some mistakes cost more than others. Goodbye, Mr. Hawkins. I hope things work out better for you." After she hung up, I sat in my workshop and thought about the past few weeks. I'd set out to get revenge on the people who betrayed me, and I'd succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. Brad was facing criminal charges and financial ruin. Claire had lost her job, her reputation, and her marriage. Melanie had abandoned her when things got difficult. Even Jason, the hired muscle, was in jail. I should have felt satisfied, victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. But as I looked around my workshop at the tools and projects that represented my real life, not the corporate games and social climbing that had consumed Claire, I realized something important. I was free. Free from a marriage built on lies. Free from people who saw me as nothing more than a blue-collar worker to be manipulated. Free to build a new life on my own terms. The war was over and I'd won. But more importantly, I'd survived with my integrity intact. That evening, I went back to Murphy's for a beer. Tina was working and she smiled when she saw me. "How are you holding up, Eddie?" "Better than expected." "Good. You deserve better than what she put you through." I raised my beer bottle in a toast. "To fresh starts." "To fresh starts," Tina agreed. Outside, the sun was setting over Cedar Falls, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I was content to sit in a bar where people knew my worth and remember what it felt like to win. The underdog's reckoning was complete.